How's it going, my sinners? Welcome back to another great video here on the Same Show. Stay warm, stay safe, stay frosty. So, Saviour, we're here to talk about Boneworks and Half Life Alyx.
That's right, Dr. Douche. Welcome back.
Thank you.
It's great to see you again, everyone. This is Dr. Douche.
Dr. Douche is back. Don't worry, we're staying safe, we're staying fresh. I got my muzzle and I got my safety helmet.
This is all filmed within regulations.
Well within regulations.
We're tightly regulated. You might recognize Dr. Douche from previous videos, such as classics like Why the Mandalorian Sucks, and other great videos.
Although I have changed my opinion on that one. I do actually think Mandalorian is quite a good show now.
We're here to talk about Half Life Alyx versus Boneworks, 1 year later.
Okay, so I've done a lot of VR in the past year. I recently bought myself an Oculus Quest 2. That's right.
Which I would not recommend unless if you want Facebook to completely own your soul and all your human rights. But this is Dr. Douche we're talking about. So.
They already own me. I'm already bought and sold for, I can tell you that much. So, after selling my soul,
yep,
I have played them both probably about the same amount of hours, so I'm going to say maybe 60 hours.
60 hours?
Each.
Right, well I've played Boneworks pretty much halfway full of the campaign, maybe almost finished, but I never quite finished it, and then I've played around 2 levels of Half Life Alyx.
Okay.
So yeah, that's why we want to talk about comparing the two, which one we think is better, and which one has more support, and which one has more potential, starting off with gameplay.
Okay, so for me, Half Life Alyx is a good VR game, but it doesn't break the mold. It doesn't. No. It's still doing all the same usual things that previous games have done, like Arizona Sunshine.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you can aim down your sights, and you can at least move around. You don't have to teleport. That was like
you can teleport if you want, but it's not. You don't need to.
You don't have to, except if you want to make a jump from one ledge to another, or if you want to go anywhere, really, basically, that's not just directly easy place to walk through, you have to teleport.
Right. Oh yeah, it does do that.
It does do that, which I think that's one of the first things about Half Life Alyx, which breaks the immersion.
The thing with Half Life Alyx is it's much more accessible to the, because most people aren't in VR as of yet, but it's steadily getting more and more.
Sure.
Everyone's getting involved in VR.
You could be crippled and you could play
Half Life Alyx. Yeah, that's the difference. But you can't be crippled and still play Boneworks, which kind of, narrows it down a little bit more.
It does these days.
Yeah. I guess every game now in VR is an FPS, if you pardon the pun.
I don't see the pun.
Because it's in VR, so it's through your eyes, isn't it? Everything's first person.
Okay.
Jeez.
Half-Life Alyx, the shooting is pretty good, but what lets it down is the AI.
Yeah.
There's no
thought
whatsoever. They'll come to a certain point, they'll stand there, and they'll just keep shooting at you.
I mean, Boneworks, AI isn't amazing, but it is much better. It's more lifelike. That's mainly due to the physics of Boneworks.
Exactly, and it's not meant to be. At least you are fighting sort of zombie-like creatures in Boneworks, so you can excuse the basic AI, but it's still much smarter.
Yeah. And
you can still sort of get them to. You can still hide from them. You can still trick them or whatever. You can't do any of that.
The combat's much more challenging in Boneworks because it's all physics-based, so they can, grab you in so many different ways, molest you, and, you have to really figure out the best way to actually get them off of you physically, which feels way more weighty and impactful.
I played Half-Life Alyx the whole way through on hard difficulty, and I still felt like I needed another difficulty above that to make it challenging or interesting. Major drawbacks on Half-Life Alyx is that there's no melee combat, which for a Half-Life game, it's just incredible that they missed it out. I mean, I don't know about you, Dr. Douche, but I've played. I'm Dr. Douche. I played. I'm Saviour 3.0, everybody.
Saviour 0.0.
Melee combat.
Yes.
Melee combat. So, Half-Life is traditionally a game where you get lots and lots and lots of weapons. So in both Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2, and the traditional thing is having the crowbar.
Yes.
And annoyingly, they do let you have a crowbar at the very, very end. Sorry, spoiler alert, at the very, very end of Half-Life Alyx, but you never get to use it.
Right, so what's the point of having it? It's just used to open stuff.
It's just no, not even that.
Right.
It's just a tease. You just get the crowbar
because it's like a signature. Right, that's pretty stupid. I mean, the thing is, you have to remember, like, Boneworks is pretty much trying to copy Half-Life and copy because it's basically a clone of Half-Life. I mean, obviously it does its own thing, but that's a big influence.
They wanted to work with Valve.
Of course, that would have been much better.
That was their original pitch.
If they did a Half-Life Alyx game with Boneworks, the engine, it would be far more superior.
It would be so much better. I like the fact that Boneworks did do its own thing, though, and that they didn't actually end up working with Valve, because at least it gives you a way of comparing the two. True. Who knows, one might have diluted the other, and you might have ended up with just one mediocre game instead of one very good game and one pretty good game. But I don't understand all the hype that there is for
Half-Life Alyx compared to Boneworks.
People keep talking about how it's the next level in VR, how it changes everything, and it really doesn't.
Games like Boneworks and Flame and Sorcery are the ones really pushing the boundaries of VR at the moment.
It's the most polished VR game.
Right.
The graphics are probably the best
it's very pretty, yeah. And you can get all the little juices in the bottles.
Sure.
That was fun.
Talk about...
I just spent most of my time messing around with bottles.
We'll talk about the updates, because originally there were no juices in the bottle.
Boneworks is a sandbox game, and what I mean by this is you can go your own way. There's lots of different paths to take, and exploring, it really rewards you for exploring. You can find all kinds of like little hidden caves and stuff like that, which I found really rewarding, because I was like, where the hell am I? I don't know. You're on a mystery location. But with Half-Life Alyx, it's a linear story. You go from point A to point B. Yeah, there's a little bit of exploration, but mostly it's a linear game. And the most annoying thing is, and that's just a trope of modern day games nowadays, is you have to have some asshole in your ear constantly talking to you, explaining what you need to be doing. But with Boneworks, you just have to figure it out yourself. But Half-Life Alyx, you have this annoying Australian, what's his name?
New Zealand.
Russell or something.
Yeah, he's played by Rhys Darby.
Yeah, I know, he's a good actor.
Flight of Conchords.
I just feel like his writing was...
the writing on Half-Life Alyx, and that's the other thing which I feel draws it back massively.
Yeah.
The writing, I mean, comparing the writing on Half-Life Alyx and Boneworks, you can't really, because Boneworks, and that's one of the criticisms that I heard from IGN and other mainstream reviewers, was that the story is lacking, or that they felt the story was...
mediocre!
Mediocre or contrived.
You're right,
but I don't think it was that contrived, and it actually, because it leaves you asking a lot of questions about what's going on in the world, it's more interesting.
Exactly, yeah. I like things where it doesn't spell it out for you, but for the wider audience, like you said, who might be crippled, because that's why you might invest in VR if you're mentally handicapped or whatever. Most people can pick up Half-Life...
I don't think mentally handicapped people enjoy VR.
Most people can pick up Half-Life Alyx and play it. You can even play it lying in your squalor if you want. But Boneworks, you have to get physical, you have to get jiggy with it.
You will sweat.
Yes, you will sweat, and you will burn off some calories. But the problem is, most people, and we're lucky because we've both got VR legs, but a lot of people do suffer from motion sickness, and that is it's a hard disease that we have to face in the 21st century. We have to deal with all these horrible first world problems and motion sickness. Poverty. Yes, exactly. Never mind the underbelly.
Never mind disease.
Yes, motion sickness is the real problem that we have to all overcome if we want to enter this beautiful dystopian age of just being transported
locked in
your boxes, locked in your helmets. So that's another thing to remember. So another thing that's great about Boneworks is just the pure immersion level. Like we talked about before, it has a much better physics engine. And, Half-Life Alyx obviously recognizes Boneworks, and obviously does incorporate some of the stuff from Boneworks. Like if you pick up a box, it does have some weight to it. But, things like guns and stuff like that, they don't really feel like you're holding... I mean, it's very hard to mimic the feeling of holding something that has weight, but Boneworks has so much detail. You know, you can see every single cartridge, every single bullet that you shoot. You know, it all like actually lands on the floor. Everything has such in-depth physics.
You can't drop your gun in Half-Life Alyx.
Right. Yeah, I know. That's just.
It's just a click. You click one gun. You get a choice of 4 guns. You get to modify them. That was the big draw that people said, oh, there's some replayability.
Right.
You can mod your weapons, which, you know, you can change them around slightly for different game playthroughs, but you can't even do a new game plus.
No.
There's no
carry. And the reloading is very basic and stripped down. You know, Boneworks actually gives you, you know, like, it actually respects you to have a brain, actually expects you to able to understand how firearms work. And that's just a really cool thing to do. That's the whole point of VR, surely, is to be immersed. So, if you can't tell by now, I'm more on the Boneworks team. And, you know, I'm not a big fan of VR anyway, but if we're going to make good VR games, then Boneworks is a really good setting example, I think, so.
Definitely, and it deserves a lot more hype and credit from the industry than Half-Life Alyx is getting.
It's just because
it's because it's Half-Life.
Exactly,
and
it's got the name.
It's Valve.
Yes.
They really dropped the ball on this one, I want to say. I really love Half-Life 1, Half-Life 2. They are some of my favourite games of all time.
Yeah.
The story as well on them is much better and more engaging. This one, it just feels like it's, as well, just trying to be funny all the time.
Yes.
And none of the characters take anything seriously.
Yeah.
So you feel no sense of jeopardy as you go along.
No, exactly. If you're going into a dark, scary place, you've got to have these jokes constantly going through your head, you know, and that just takes away the fear and the suspense.
Yes, absolutely.
And what do you feel of like Alyx as a character compared to, you know, other Half-Life characters?
Sure, she's good in Half-Life 2, which is the other one she appears in, but it's not the same character. She's
progressified.
She's been progressified. Yeah.
You heard it here first. Audio-wise, Half-Life Alyx obviously has some great, you know, audio design with the shooting and the world building. You know, when you're in a city, it does feel like you're getting all that ambient noise and stuff like that, which is really good for immersion. But Boneworks, I feel like, has a lot more crunchy, you know, impact to it. And the sound design, Boneworks is more, you know, subtle, and it plays on a lot of kind of like ambient synth kind of soundtrack, which I like. It just kind of builds like a mysterious kind of vibe. And what do you feel like about Half-Life Alyx with the music?
I think they did a good job there.
Right.
Some of the best bits are when you're entering a combat and the music suddenly ramps up and you're suddenly feeling, especially in the final few levels, it does build up Half-Life Alyx. The first few levels are very sort of slow and boring, and the music is quite... it's in the background, you don't notice it much. But as it gets closer and closer towards the end, then you feel much more in it. And you do feel kind of cool shooting and, you know, having an interesting soundtrack behind you. The major downside with Boneworks is soundtrack or sound design. Very repetitive.
Right.
They'll use the same 3 or 4 songs.
That's
you find
true.
Little radios as you go through.
Oh god, I hate the radio music.
Oh, I like the radio
I know,
music.
but it's the same. It makes you feel like, but it's good because it makes you feel like you're trapped. I mean, that's the whole thing of that game.
The whole thing.
You're kind of trapped in your VR headset, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
you're trying to
it does make you feel like you're stuck in a loop, which I quite like.
So maybe that was a deliberate thing on their part.
Or it was just laziness, who knows.
Or, they had limited artists to work with.
Right.
I do like the song. In fact, I can almost hear it playing in my head right now.
Same.
It's very catchy.
It is, yeah.
So they're hard to compare on sound.
Right, yeah. And also, I feel like Boneworks, I mean, obviously it was their first proper game, but if they really, you know, brought in their own originality, you know, and made like a proper world instead of like a kind of like testing facility, which is, you know, it makes sense in the world, in the game, but also it is because they're just testing out all that crazy engine. But if they really brought in, you know, high production and everything, that could be so much more interesting.
The thing to remember with Boneworks is it is a very, very small team. I'm sure Valve still has quite a small core team.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they're not the same people that made Half-Life 1, where they were, just ironically, like the team in Boneworks, where they were different people working on... They'd have one person working on each level.
Right.
So you'd end up with very different levels throughout the game. And it's the same with Boneworks. So you have very different sets, and it never feels predictable, like you know what's going to happen. Whereas Half-Life Alyx, it's very polished. It feels like a AAA game, but like most AAA games these days,
lacks soul. Crab people, taste like crab, looks like people. Dump!
Okay, time to talk about crab people.
Yes. Okay.
So both games have two forms of head
Crab
crabs.
people. Yeah, exactly.
Both games feature head crabs.
That's right, Dr. Douche. The difference between Boneworks Headcrabs and Half Life Headcrabs is pretty night and day, if I'm honest. I mean, which one do you think is far superior, in your opinion?
Yes, I will say the head crabs on Boneworks are better.
Right, yes.
I had to think about it for a moment there, just the way... I mean, the animations, that's what makes all the difference and gives the sense of realism.
Right, yeah.
The head crabs on Half Life Alyx are incredibly predictable.
Right,
you know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to move up, and they're going to expose their...
They don't pose much... It feels, yeah, like just programmed.
It does feel very programmed, and then you just shoot with your pistol, or whatever you want to do.
And they're easy to take off your head as well. If they do actually jump on you...
You can't take them off.
What?
You can't even use your hands.
I'm just thinking about Boneworks.
You're thinking of Boneworks.
That's why it's so much better. I mean, you can actually wrestle these goddamn creatures off of your head.
Yeah.
And your whole vision becomes distorted. That's like so much more better.
Yeah, I think you can, pick them up after they're dead. And
yeah, you can.
You
can play with them afterwards, but you can't actually wrestle with them.
I'm not sure you can, no. There's no way of killing anything with your hand.
No.
And while we're here, I'm just going to quickly touch on something we missed. You have a body in Boneworks.
True,
a fully
animated, functional body.
Functional. It is actually functional. There are downsides to that, and I will say...
it can be clunky.
Especially when you want to move your legs.
Right, yeah. Or jumping. Jumping is pretty weird.
Jumping is pretty difficult. There's a button you press, but you can also jump with your body to give yourself an extra boost.
Yeah.
That's the only time where I do feel slightly a bit motion...
Sick, yeah, exactly. I felt sick, before with doing crazy movements, and we, like you said, are pretty used to VR legs.
So. Once Boneworks has full body tracking, I'm sure that's something they're going to work.
That'll be so good.
That will make
and you can just use your hands as well.
All the difference. Yeah,
of course. With Boneworks having a body, it does really make a lot of difference because not only can you actually apply things on your body. I mean, other games have done this before, like Onward, but it's kind of like a shadow body. This is a proper body, so you actually have to reach for your sidearms, you actually have to struggle with your ammunition, and, a good design, I feel like, was the way you can actually implement controlling your legs. Like, you can crouch low by using the controller, you can also crouch by using your body, so if you haven't got that much room in the real world, it gives you way more, like, freedom to, flexibility and movement.
That actually is groundbreaking.
Exactly,
within VR.
But no one talks about it like it was... They just thought it was like a weird test demo. Yeah, like obviously some people give it props, but not what it deserves.
Certainly not the mainstream reviewers. IGN, they're just like, oh well, very interesting test case game.
Exactly.
Because most of these journalists
can't play VR properly.
They're probably playing 10 minutes or something.
Exactly.
Spending a couple of hours.
That's journalism now with anything, pretty much. So time to talk about mods.
Mods and updates, I guess.
I'll hand you over to Dr. Douche, because I know nothing about mods.
So, it's been a year now since...
1 year later since Boneworks and Half Life Alyx came out.
I think Half Life Alyx came out.
Yeah, but we're comparing it 1 year later.
Okay.
Boneworks versus Half Life Alyx.
Yeah.
Just say that as well. Like Half Life Alyx versus Boneworks.
Half Life Alyx versus Boneworks. Algorithms! Boneworks added... few extra hidden levels, so you can replay the whole campaign
and find new places. That's cool.
And there's because you've gotten used to how to use your body, the fact that you'll have so much more freedom. You can actually go. If you look up and you see somewhere that you see a series of drain pipes, for example.
Right. Yeah, you can climb.
You don't think that when you first time you play through, you just don't assume. Oh yeah, I could probably climb that because no other game in VR has ever done that before.
Yeah.
So when you play through a second time, you're going through with completely different eyes because you're capable of doing whatever really that would be allowed within real world physics.
Well, if you're Superman.
Well, obviously you have force powers.
It's difficult to climb as well in Boneworks.
Oh, it's very difficult.
that makes it challenging.
But there's new ways to unlock things. So the first thing that they brought out in Boneworks was an arena mode, and when you play through the second time, there are the reclamation bins, which you might remember from your playthroughs.
Slightly.
So you can drop weapons,
Right.
or objects, or even certain types of enemy classes, and that means you can then bring them into the arena. And now they've created a new sandbox mode where you can also spawn any of the things that you brought into your reclamation bin. So
right, that's cool.
There's replayability.
That's a good feature.
It's a very good feature with Boneworks. And then there's different ways to figure out how to get to the reclamation bin and bring certain objects in that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So, for example, I figured out a way right in the museum where if I detached this humongous statue from the wall and then pulled the statue all the way through the lobby, it takes forever, but it's very rewarding, and then jam it into the door, you can keep the door open and then go back and fetch all of your weapons.
That's the great thing about Boneworks. I just have to stress, like, Boneworks is like next level because you can use every single object that's in the world. So you can use them not only as weapons, but as ways to, you know, progress through the level. Yes. So if you don't want to go the normal route, you can basically cheat if you know how to. Yeah, exactly, and just use the actual real world objects, and it just gives you like the sense, like, you know, like, holy shit, like this. I mean, a three-dimensional space that everything has a use, which Half Life Alyx doesn't have, and then it just follows all these, you know, standard modern day gaming tropes that they have to plus in. You know, Boneworks is a VR game. Half Life Alyx is a game that's in VR, but it's not necessarily built for the purpose of VR.
That's how it feels.
Yeah, exactly.
They could have released Half Life Alyx on 2D, and thereby they would have satisfied all the Half-Life fanboys who were dying to play a new Half-Life but didn't have VR. You could have easily have done it. I know that Valve are working on their next game, and I think I've heard rumours that it might be a VR support and also a two-dimensional flat-screen game. The updates on Half-Life Alyx were very incremental and small at first, and it felt like they were almost doing it just in competition with Boneworks. So the first thing they added was, like you said, with the bottles.
Giblets.
They added some giblets.
I love me some giblets.
You could get some liquid. You could shake around the liquid.
That's cool. I mean,
that is actually
gimmicky, but it's cool.
It is cool. That's one thing Boneworks has not done, by the way, that Half-Life Alyx
wow,
has done.
That's a real reason.
1 point for Half-Life Alyx and 3,000 for Boneworks.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, that obviously took some work for them to do, and you know, the fact that it took several months to get that update in.
It just doesn't deserve the props it's got compared to Boneworks, and that's the thing. But as a man who's played both of them, where would you rate Boneworks out of 10?
Hang on, sorry, there's something I've just got to say about the updates, because otherwise people who are massive fans of Half-Life will be shouting at the screen.
The mods.
Right now. They added mods.
Yeah.
So much
that's not the developers, is it, really? They're giving mod support. That's the community. You can't really base a game that it's good based on the community. I mean, Skyrim is a buggy mess, but the community made it good because of the mod support.
Yeah, and that is very telling as well. Is that the best levels in Half-Life Alyx, the best time I've had in Half-Life Alyx, have been playing modders levels, not the campaign.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They've added all sorts of interesting mods that you can do. So, for instance, there's a mod where you can actually turn your torch on and off.
You can't do. Oh yeah, it just comes on automatically.
It just comes on automatically in the main campaign.
You can have lightsabers as well, can't you?
Yeah.
With mod support.
Yeah, there's lightsabers. Cool. There's
lightsabers.
There's different guns that you can have to replace your standard issue weapons.
Gives it,
one of the favourite mods that I've played through on my second playthrough was the sustenance mod. So if you're getting low on health,
that's cool.
You can eat things. Because there's all sorts of food in the environment, and you can even, if you eat something that's gone off, like an old stale can of food, you'll gain some health, and then it'll drop down again. So there's actual a bit of realism, and you know, there's new things by playing Half-Life again with the mods that make it so much more fun. Where the hell is everyone run? If you're playing Half-Life Alyx on hard, for instance, you run out of bullets. That's it. It's game over. You just have to let yourself die.
Right. That's
which
stupid.
Is so.
Yeah.
Why it gets the props from the community?
It's
beyond me.
Half-Life and it's successful. I think that's mostly it, and it does do some things. It's a good. It's a because let's be honest, most VR games are still basically glorified tech demos, because it's still a new medium, even though Zucky basically wants to get everyone in VR, so we can all be slaves to his lovely new world order. But, as it stands, most of the VR games are basically tech demos, so Half Life Alyx, it's an actual IP, it's a full game, it's not a port. So that's why, I think. And Boneworks is like more of a hidden kind of niche, gem. So, Dr. Douche, what would you rate Half Life Alyx compared with Boneworks on a scale of 10?
Of course. Despite you've probably heard me talk about this and you think, well, I absolutely hate the game. I don't hate the game. It's still probably one of the best VR games out there.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
It just fell short of my expectations, and just from all the reasons I've mentioned. I would still give it a 7 out of 10 for a VR game.
Right, okay. And Boneworks?
Probably 10 out of 10. Until something else comes along that's better in VR,
right,
it is by far the best VR game. You have a VR headset,
and you can handle it.
Get Boneworks. Even if you can't handle it, get Boneworks.
It can be quite scary. Obviously, don't put your children in VR. That's probably not a good idea. I would give Boneworks 9 out of 10. Yeah, and Half-Life Alyx I would give 6 out of 10. So, thank you for watching. This has been Dr. Douche and Savior 3.0 talking about Half-Life Alyx versus Boneworks 1 year later. We'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.